Hi everyone, my name is Caleb. So if you watched my last video, it focused on basically how we are living in a world that is both physical and spiritual. And so I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what I mean by that, but if you're interested in learning more about what I mean by that, you can check out my last video. But for this video, I want to talk about my personal experience with what I believe to be the spiritual world. And so I'm just going to get right into it. There was something that happened to me. It's probably 2 or 3 weeks now. And so I knew instantly as soon as it happened that I wanted to share it with people. Um, so that they could be impacted by it in the same way that I was, which was it drew me closer to God. So I hope that, um, in some ways, maybe you can get that out of this video today. So, um, anyways, there was a night a few weeks back where I was sleeping in bed with my wife, and it was the middle of the night. Both of us were asleep, and all of a sudden, I don't know what to call it, so I guess I'll call it a dream, even though I've had very vivid dreams before, and this was different. I don't know how to explain it in words, but it just felt different. But anyways, I'll call it a dream just for lack of a better word. But in this dream, I knew instantly. I can't explain it, but I knew instantly that a demon had just walked into our house. And in my dream, I had this snapshot, like overview of like a live feed of the demon standing uh, in my doorway. Like my front door's closed and the demon is in my house. And I can even, like, I remember it so vividly, I could tell you, if you're at my house, I could point to you where I saw this demon standing. And in my dream, I instantly just became so overwhelmed with fear, just this intense fear. I didn't know what to do. I started panicking. I remember I was trying desperately to call out for my wife, who's in bed next to me. And so I'm trying desperately to say her name, and I can't get the words out, which makes me even more panicked in that moment. And then I remember in an instant, I was like, why am I calling for my wife when it's a demon, which is like an evil spirit, um, she's not gonna help me in that. Maybe if there's a physical intruder like a robber or something, like maybe she can, grab a phone and call the police or whatever. But with a evil spirit in my house, what's my wife going to do to help me combat that? And so in that instant, I remembered, okay, my wife's not going to be able to help me, but I know someone who can, and it's God. And so in my dream, as soon as I make that realization that I'm calling out to the wrong person, as soon as I made that realization that God has the power to overcome this and God lives within me, as soon as I made that realization in the dream, my fear, my panic just went away. It went from a 10 on the fear scale to a 0. I mean, I was calm, as cool as could be. And when I made that realization that God was with me and He, with Him, you know, through His power, I had the power to defeat this evil presence. I got up out of bed, still in my dream, and I walk to the doorway, and I turn into the hallway, and I'm standing in the hallway, and I'm standing face to face at the top of the steps. So the steps are probably about, I don't know, 10, 12 feet from me. I'm staring face to face with this demon, and he's standing at the top of my steps, and I can still picture it. He he was tall. He was about He was taller than the door frames. He had a head like a face. He had a very long, slender body. He didn't have like, defined arms and legs like a human would, but his body was just kind of all one, just like dark, like a dark figure. He was all dark. His whole body was black, and his face was like this gray color. Um, I the closest I can come to explaining it is like when your TV's black and white and fuzzy on the static channel. That's as best as I can explain the color of his face. So I'm standing face to face with this demon, completely fearless, okay, at this point, because I know I have the power of God with me. I have God with me in this moment. And I stare at him face to face, and he froze. And he actually was like backed into a wall at the top of my steps, just standing there completely frozen. And I'm staring in his face at this point, face to face. And he begins to make this like just evil face. I forgot to mention when he entered my house, when he was in the doorway, I could hear this just evil, horrible, like screeching scream. I don't even know. It's an inhuman voice, noise. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like a scream, screech, like noise, and it's constant. It doesn't stop. It's not like a human when you're yelling, you have to take a breath. This is just a constant noise that's going on throughout the whole dream. From the moment he stepped foot in my house to the end of the dream, I heard this noise. So I'm standing face to face. He's still making his screech, scream, evil, demonic noise, and his face begins to like shapeshift into like, quote, scarier and scarier faces. Okay. Well, me, completely fearless, still with God, God with me, I take a step forward. I begin walking towards this demon, just head on. And with each step I take, I don't break eye contact. I'm staring this demon in the face the entire time. And with each step I take, this demon, still frozen, becomes more and more panicked and like desperate. And the more panicked he becomes, the more intimidating he tries to be. And so the louder and the darker and scarier the screams are that he's making, the noises that he's making, and then the scarier, like his face is just shifting constantly into trying to make the scariest faces at me to try and intimidate me and scare me away. And I walk now, I'm arm's length from him, still staring at him, and I look out and I look at his midsection, and I reach out with my arm and I grab it, his midsection. And then I grab down lower and I pull it together, and it gets a little bit smaller. Then I hold and I grab at the top and I pull it together, and it gets even smaller. And I do one final grab from the bottom, and I grab what's now his feet because he's crumbling smaller and smaller with each grab, and I crumble him into a ball. At this point, the demon went from being as tall as my door frames, taller, to now he's crunched up into a ball in my fist. And I remember in my dream, this is so vivid, I turn my fist towards me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, what do I do with this now? And I just turn down the steps to my left, and I just go to toss it as you would, a piece of trash in the garbage can. I go to toss it, and when I open my fist to throw, there's nothing. It's not dust, there's no ashes, there's nothing. I open my fist to nothing. And then in my dream, I walk back to my room, and I'm standing right outside my doorway, and I have this thought. Instantly, I feel like God is telling me, Just so you know, sometimes when you face demons face to face, one of the tactics they may use is they might try to twist scripture, and they might try to trip you up. And all this is a tactic to try and make your faith waver. It's trying to put a crack in the wall, right? And I don't know why I had that thought. That's not a strategy or a tactic the demon used with me in that moment, but it was like as if God is sending me this message, and he's just like, oh, and by the way, sometimes they'll try and take my word and twist it and trip you up and challenge you that way. And so I was like, oh, well, the end of the dream was, my final thought was, well, I better get into God's word and, be prepared to combat that. And then that was it. That was the end of my dream. And I woke up from that dream in real life now. And I was just something about it. Like I knew instantly. I've had vivid dreams before, but not like this. This felt like it was a message from God. So I don't know if it was real if I really slayed a demon that day through the power of God. I don't know. But regardless, it felt real to me, and it felt like God was telling me, this is something that we are called to do. This is something that you read about, even in the New Testament. You read about, exorcisms. You read about evil spirits, casting them out. Like, this is something that's in the Bible. This is something that Christians are called to do. And I knew in that moment that that's what God was calling me to do. I can't explain it other than that. It was so clear. My call and my purpose was clear, crystal clear from God. And I went about my day. And that evening, after we put our daughter down for bed, so this a whole day passed. The end of that day, uh, daughter's in bed, and I'm talking to my wife. And I'm like, babe, I got to tell you about this crazy dream I had. And she's like, okay. So I start telling her about the dream. I tell her everything that I just told you guys in the same details. And I'm like, not even halfway through this dream, pretty early on into me telling her this dream, she starts crying. And I see her face fill with tears. I see the tears begin to build. I see them start coming down her face. And I didn't stop. I finished, and I told the whole dream to her. And at the end of that, she said, I have to tell you something. And I said, what? And she said, well, she couldn't put a time frame on it initially. But when this thing happened, she wrote it down in her prayer journal, and we went and looked up the date. But it was about 8 months roughly prior to my dream. She there were a couple instances, so I'll tell you about them, three in particular. So one of the instances, she's usually the last one to bed. Her job, she kind of works whenever she's able to, and so a lot of times night times she's up late working. So it's not rare that she's the last one to bed. Well, one night she was on her way to bed, and she sensed, she couldn't explain it, but she sensed like this dark presence in the house. And something within her, alarm bells were going off, and something within her compelled her to go to each and every door frame in our house and pray over it. Every single door frame in the upstairs, and every single door frame in the downstairs as well. So our whole house, every door frame, she's praying over it. And then she went to bed. Second time, I don't know how much time passed between that and the second time. Same thing. She's going to bed. Last one going to bed. It's late and at night. And same thing. She senses like this dark presence. Goes around the house, prays over every single doorway before coming upstairs to go to bed. So twice that happened, and it wasn't like, she's not a paranoid person. She's never done that before. Those are the only two times, and the only two times since that she's done that. And then there was a third time where we were both sleeping. It was the middle of the night. Our house was silent, and she woke up from her sleep, and she looks over at our doorway, and she sees a dark figure standing in our doorway. And she was kind of like frozen by it, and um, she instantly began to rebuke it. She started saying, this is a house of God. You need to leave. You are not welcome here. I'm a child of God. You need to leave. You're not welcome here. And the figure initially like didn't. I think he was like kind of caught off guard or something. He didn't really expect her to to be awake or call her out or whatever. And he just kind of like froze and looked at her, and she kept rebuking this thing. And when it froze and looked at her, she kind of froze too. Like she was like, is this really happening? And so she went from rebuking it to being silent and shocked, like not knowing what to do. Well, after staring at her and kind of in a standstill, the dark figure decides to proceed forward. And so he takes about two more steps forward. And she said he was clearly going to me. He was going directly towards me. He was seeking me out. And she knew this. And so when it took a couple steps forward, she started rebuking it even more. And and she said she was in a standstill with this dark figure for about 10 minutes, just rebuking it again and again and again and again for 10 minutes. This is a house of God. You are not welcome here. Do not go near him. He's a man of God. You need to get away. Just for 10 minutes, this went on. She's sitting straight up in her bed, and this thing stopped in its tracks, staring at her. And she said after, about 10 minutes is what her guess is, the thing kind of shriveled down to a smaller size and then just kind of left the room, and that was that. Now, she never told me about any of those three instances until I told her about my dream, because she thought that I would think that she's crazy. Um, but it wasn't until I told her the dream. So I had that dream, and I told her that dream without ever hearing about those three instances that I just told you about. I don't know how to explain it. You can be a skeptic and you can say, oh, it was just a crazy dream or whatever. But regardless, if you are a Christian, if you claim to be a Christian and you crack open your Bible, you'll see time and time again where it talks about demons, and it talks about Jesus and his disciples casting out demons. And so it's a very real thing. I believe that our society, the reason why we don't see it is because we're not looking for it. We're just not. We're not looking for it. We're complacent. We're comfortable. We've surrendered a lot of territory to Satan. We call things that are, you know, darkness or evil, or demons. We call those things other things. Maybe we give them a label of mental illness or whatever it may be, but they're out there. And so I don't know. I don't know what to tell you to do with this story. I felt led to give you this story, and so here I am recording this story to upload onto YouTube. You can take with this information and do what you will. I suggest taking it to prayer at minimum and just seeing where God leads you and how he convicts you and stirs your heart. Anyways, I love you guys. Thanks for giving this a listen. Um, have a good day.